Ebitongole by'amateeka bikungaanidde ku kkooti ensukkulumu mu lutuulo olw'enjawulo okukungubagira eyaliko omulamuzi w'ekkooti ensukkulumu eyawummula Profesa Dr. George Wilson Kanyeihamba eyafa ssabbiiti ewedde. Ku ssaawa nga 8:30 omubiri gw'omugenzi eyali omulamuzi George Wilson Kanyeihamba gubadde gutuusiddwa ku kitebe ky'essiga eddamuzi era nga wateereddwawo olutuula lwa kkooti olw'enjawulo okusiima emirimu n'obuweereza bw'omulamuzi George Wilson Kanyeihamba. Enteekateeka z'olutuula lwa kkooti ensukkulumu okusiima emirimu gy'omugenzi Kanyeihamba zikubiriziddwa Ssaabalamuzi Alphonse Owiny-Dollo so nga bapuliida bakulembeddwamu Ssaabawolereza wa gavumenti Joseph Kiryowa Kiwanuka.
Stories are told about Justice Kanyeihamba. About 20 years ago, when Justice Kanyeihamba was about 66, he was teeing off hole number 18. Hole number 18 had a tree which was now probably 10 feet high, 10, 20 feet high. So he was playing with this young golfer of about 20 years, and he told him, you know, I used to hit, when I was your age, a while ago I used to hit this ball straight over this tree onto the green. So he said, this young man sizes himself up and says, I've got to hit this ball. Because if Justice Kanyeihamba could go over this tree, I am going over this tree. Of course, the young golfer did not go over the tree. And Justice Kanyeihamba quipped and said, you foolish young man. When I was your age, that tree was ground high. So clearly he got him because there was a bet going on as to who would win, and Justice Kanyeihamba got him right there. Prior to joining the judiciary, Professor Kanyeihamba served also as the Minister of Justice and Attorney General in 1979 and 1989 to 1991. He also served as a Minister of Justice, where he offered invaluable service to his motherland, for which we are truly grateful as a nation. Of course, as Attorney General right now, I stand on the shoulders of these great legal minds, these legal giants, just such as Professor Kanyeihamba. We have some here, Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi, retired Justice Bart Katurebe. So it is that foundation that they laid for us on which we stand today. As a ministry and the chambers in the Ministry of Justice, we thank Justice Kanyeihamba for his service. Professor Kanyeihamba also was a member of the Constituent Assembly, was a Constituent Assembly delegate and the chairperson of the Legal and Drafting Committee of 1995. I encourage all of you who would like to understand the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda to go and read the Hansard of that debate in Parliament. In that regard, Professor Kanyeihamba had the privilege of serving in all three arms of government, that is the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And I am pleased to say that he served all of them with diligence, commitment, and integrity. In the academic world, I am told that Professor Kanyeihamba possessed a profound understanding of the law and a disdain for people who did not get the simple principles of the law, but was always willing and had a great ability to try and drag every student along and ensure that they did appreciate the points of law that he was putting across. It is his ability to make complex ideas accessible that truly set him apart from other professors. He had a talent for igniting a passion in students and encouraging them to think critically. Today, as we reflect on Professor Kanyeihamba's legacy, let us remember the lessons he impacted, and not just about the law, but about dignity, integrity, rule of law, and respect for one another. Although we say goodbye to Professor Kanyeihamba, the jurist, friend, husband, and father, let us celebrate the life he lived and the impact he made. My appeal to you all is that we honor his memory by carrying forward his commitment to justice and education, thus creating a better environment. To his immediate family, on behalf of the Attorney General's chambers, on behalf of the Uganda Bar, and on my own behalf, we stand by you as you grieve and pray that his spirit will live in your hearts. May the soul of Professor George Kanyeihamba rest in eternal peace. I say all this for God and my country. I thank you.
Sabalamuzi Owinyiddolo atenderezza Kanyeihamba olw'okuweereza abantu obuteebalira n'okuweesa essiga eddamuzi ekitiibwa.
As well as his astounding academic contributions have significantly shaped the nation's legal landscape and jurisprudence. The judiciary is proud of him and will forever remember him. As was said by the Deputy Chief Justice of Uganda, what is peculiar about, I think most professions, let me speak about the legal profession, when you serve at this side, at the bench side, you never die. And if you are a Kanyeihamba, even for thousands of years, you never die, because you are cited every day. And they don't say Kanyeihamba, formerly Justice of the Supreme Court. He will always be cited as Kanyeihamba JSC. Or my brother Bart Katurebe will always be cited as Katurebe Chief Justice, not emeritus. This is how we continue living until thy kingdom come. Justice Kanyeihamba joined the judiciary right at the apex, the top of the pyramid, as a justice of the Supreme Court, and served till his retirement in the year 2009. Before his appointment to the Supreme Court in 1997, he was in academia. Nonetheless, his grasp of the law and the art of judgment writing were very strong and commendable. He is well known for his unwavering dedication to enforcing the law, his deep intelligence, and his fearless independence. In addition to serving on the bench, Justice Kanyeihamba was a distinguished scholar and prolific writer whose writings served as a source of inspiration and guidance for innumerable scholars and legal professionals in Uganda and around the world. He gained respect and recognition on a national and worldwide level for his contributions to the legal and academic domains. He was one of the pioneer judges of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, pioneer president of the African chapter of the International Association of Refugee Law Judges, member of the International Criminal Court Bar Council, and a barrister of the Supreme Court of England and Wales. Quite a mouthful. He taught law in a number of institutions, including Makerere University, Uganda Christian University, the University of Wales, Lancaster Polytechnic, now Coventry University, University of Warwick, Portsmouth University, and Uganda Law School in Samizi, which became the Law Development Center, among others. He also served as Chancellor of Kampala International University from June 2003 to April 2011, and pioneer Chancellor of Kabale University from the year 2002 to 2015. Through this calling, the people that have been impacted by this great professor are innumerable, and I have no doubt that his legacy will survive for generations. In the political sphere, Honorable Justice Professor G.W. Kanyeihamba served as a member of parliament, a minister, and attorney general, and was very instrumental in drafting of the 1995 Constitution, which has stood the test of time. His steadfast integrity, moral leadership, and extraordinary bravery in upholding the independence of the judiciary and the sanctity of the Constitution define Justice Kanyehamba's legacy. I wish to thank the following members of the late Professor Kanyeihamba for assisting the professor in all possible ways to accomplish all the milestones that have been enumerated in this short life that he has lived. We also appreciate you in a special way for standing the stress of more than 2 weeks funeral activities. It is quite draining, but you have braved the task. May the good Lord bless you for his further sacrifice. It has been said, our foreign brother spoke his mind. He was candid, he was brave, but there are many people in this country who are brave, who speak their minds. The difference between Kanyeihamba and many of them is that he was a man of substance. He did not speak just for the sake of speaking. He was not a hollow team. When he spoke, agreed with him or not, you remember what he said. He was a real man. And
amyuka Ssaabalamuzi omulamuzi Dr. Flavian Nzeija asiimye Profesa Kanyeihamba olw'okutumbula eddembe ly'obuntu mu kiseera we yakolera egy'obulamuzi.
Judicial officers and other professionals. As a justice of the Supreme Court, he had an opportunity to interact with young and old practitioners. He coached them and they benefited from his expertise and experience. I'm certain that all of us in the judiciary have benefited from his unique attributes of boldness, openness, and humor. He will be remembered as an icon of the rule of law, an epitome of judicial integrity and ethics. He has left a wealth of jurisprudence and legal precedents in our legal system as a justice of the apex temple of justice of the Supreme Court. Even in his retirement, Justice Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamba has shown his dedication of service to his motherland, Uganda, and mankind. The legal fraternity, judiciary, and the country at large have lost an icon of justice, rule of law, and good governance. His meritorious service to the legal fraternity and to the nation as a justice of the Supreme Court has left an indelible legacy to be remembered all the time. His character and personality will be missed by many of us. And as the saying goes, judges never die. They live through their judgments. So he will live forever. We, however, give glory and thanks to the Almighty Lord for the gift of life he gave to our beloved brother, Honorable Justice George Wilson Kanyeihamba, although he has left us at a time we needed him most. This is what the Almighty Lord has willed. We have no control over God's actions, but we are comforted that the good deeds of Justice Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamba will remain forever. We condole with the President of the Republic of Uganda, the Honorable Chief Justice of Uganda, his colleagues, justices and judges of the courts of judicature, other judicial officers and judicial staff, the Kigozi community to which I belong, where he hails from, his wisdom, children, relatives, in-laws, and the entire country for the loss of such an icon of the rule of law, a patriot and a gallant son of Uganda. Of course, on a selfish note, Justice Kanyeihamba comes from Rwanda. My grandfather comes from Bukora. Bukora overlooks Rwanda. So you can see we could even be relatives when we are not aware. So, and he was one of the eminent Bachiga, of course, who inspired us to do law. Of course, we have many of them here. Honorable Ruhakana Rugunandugu, Honorable Mambabazi, Professor Suruma. We have quite many here. But Kanyeihamba, in the area of law, was, of course, an icon. So he's the one who inspired us to do law. Now, Nugurugunda, of course, I had a case with him, private, when he said that every problem Kanyeihamba had, I should solve it. So Kanyeihamba, he would not spend a month without coming to me to solve his problems. And so one time I was traveling up country and I had reached Mbarara. He called me that he needed me. He was at my office. Then I said, I'm in Mbarara. He said, no, come back. Ndugurugunda said you should handle my problems. I'm at your office. So I remember when I met Ndugu Rugunda here at a function, I said, Ndugu, now you can imagine how I was told to come back. But that was Kanyeihamba for you. Very, very, very emphatic, but also very humorous. Actually, if you start with him, he had very interesting stories. And of course, towards the end of his life, he could not, because I had moved to a court up here. So I would meet him in my former office where we had converted that office into an area for judges. So he would come in a wheelchair, and that's where I would find him. So, and then I think at his Thanksgiving, he had said that he needed only two Bachiga who are serious to make remarks. Unfortunately, I was not around. I was out of the country. He said, Ndugu Rugunda. No, I think he mentioned three. He said, Ndugu Rugunda, Honorable Mambabazi, and yourself. You are the only serious people in Ruchiga. I said, Professor, we are not the only serious people. There are so many of them. He said, you are the ones that you know. So I will miss him at an individual level, and may his soul rest in eternal peace. I'm glad I have met the family. We condole with you. Take heart. God gives and God takes. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Mukyala w'omugenzi Susan Kanyeihamba ayogedde ku bbanga omuntu alessa omukululo naddala eri bannamateeka era bw'atyo n'asiima essiga eddamuzi okusibula bba mu kitiibwa.
Ladies and gentlemen, in your distinguished capacities, on my own behalf and in the name of my family standing here with me, we express our deep appreciation for this honour and tribute. Standing here with me is Sarah, Joel, Ruth, virtually, Catherine, Betty, and the grandchildren. I am glad that they are here to see this special session tribute by George's other family, the Judiciary. We stand in this building where George lived, practiced, and was revered even in retirement. He came to this place from Rwanda through Mwiri and to the United Kingdom. It is a remarkable journey. Since we returned, we have been pleasantly surprised by the numerous stories and testimonies. We knew him at a personal level, but are often astounded by what he meant to all of you. In honouring him today, here at these grounds of the new Supreme Court, we can only feel proud and grateful. As you all know, his legal philosophy was rooted in equal opportunity, democracy, fairness, and a firm belief in the inalienable and indivisible human rights of all, irrespective of race, tribe, gender, religion, or origin. Through you, Honourable Chief Justice, we express our profound appreciation for this honour. We express our gratitude for the support you have rendered to the family before and after his passing. I knew that George would inspire a generation of judges and lawyers. There is a George in all of the young students at Makerere and in a certain remote school up in the beautiful hills or down the valleys of this beautiful country, Uganda. So George will live in through all of you. Mwebele Munonga. God bless you all.
Akola ng'omulamuzi w'ekkooti ensukkulumu Jane Okuwo Kajuga atenderezza omulamuzi Kanyeihamba ng'omulamuzi eyali ayimirira ku kigammo kye.
The Honourable Justice Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamba, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to adopt the protocol that was laid out by the Acting Chief Registrar. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We gather today to pay tribute to a remarkable and distinguished individual whose dedication to justice and unwavering commitment to the rule of law has left an indelible mark on our legal system and beyond. His life is an inspiring story and a reflection of authenticity, a man who was true to himself, resilience, hard work, and courage. From the humble origins in Chigezi to an academic journey that took him across the country, then abroad, and to his illustrious career as a lecturer of law, a politician, a legislator, a prolific author, and a justice of the Supreme Court of Uganda, his contribution to our nation will never be forgotten. He wore several hats, and he wore them so well. And it seemed as if he set his mind to do something, then there was nothing that he could not do. For most of the judges of the High Court and judicial officers in courts subordinate thereto, and probably to many of us in the room, and has been actually stated by His Lordship Ngoda Ntede, we first met him through his books. My own first introduction to the late Justice Professor Kanyeihamba was through his book on constitutional law, which was an essential guide for all of us in law school and helped us understand Uganda's constitutional development and the legal framework under which we work. In another of his literary works titled The Blessings and Joy of Being Who You Are, we get a glimpse into his mind, the mind of this great man from Chigezi, and a nuanced perspective of his experiences, an insight into who he was and what he stood for. And we are very privileged that he shared his story in writing and will therefore continue to inspire and encourage us for generations to come. Not many of us had the opportunity to interact closely with him, and I have not had the opportunity to read his second autobiography. But what was so humbling when I read the first autobiography was that when he wrote about his appointment to the highest bench in the land, regardless of the wisdom, his academic credentials, he spoke about how he had to deliberately and intentionally learn how to be a good judge and adjudicate fairly. He admits that for all his knowledge, he had to be tutored in judgment writing, and that he often asked his peers to review his works and critique them for writing style and for structure. He admits, again in his book, that the experience of other colleagues with varied expertise on the bench was very helpful to him. And you could see a man who, from the outset, understood his role in spearheading the development of jurisprudence in the country when he was appointed to the highest bench in the land. I think the lesson we can draw from that is to be intentional about our service as judicial officers, work hard, and refine the skills needed to perform this honorable duty with diligence, with integrity, and also with courage. In many of his decisions, he chose principle over conscience, over convenience, and he chose duty over comfort. And his decision to remain on the bench in some of the cases, regardless of intense pressure for him to recuse himself, demonstrated his confidence in the principles of judicial independence and the courage that each judge should possess. He further demonstrated through his decisions that justice was not about popular opinion or political expedience, that it was about upholding the law with integrity and a firm resolve to make decisions based solely on the law, even if it meant standing alone. And I'm sure many of us have read his dissenting judgments. He was not afraid to stand alone for as long as he stood on principle. My only interaction with him, regrettably, because I would have loved to have known him better, was the pleasure, sometimes the pain, sometimes the humiliation, of appearing before him while he was at the Supreme Court, while I was at the bar. And I learned quickly that you could not appear before a panel on which he sat unprepared. The appearances that were scheduled before him were started by or preceded by sleepless nights spent preparing for oral submissions, because for some reason he loved the oral submissions. Ensuring that one had the mental dexterity to respond to any legal and factual questions that could be thrown at you at any time. And woe unto you if you appeared late, if you were shabby, if you were unprepared with the facts of your case, if you had presented poorly drafted documents. But most seriously, if you demonstrated a poor grasp of the law or an understanding of it, or a lack of understanding of it. In those instances, then you could never say that you would have a pleasant time before him. And that's my memory of the great man that we pay a tribute to this afternoon. Undoubtedly, he shaped our reasoning, our ability to think on our feet, and I believe that many of us are better judges because he stood, because he taught, because he mentored, and he made sound rulings on which we stand today. Every judge has their own philosophy when it comes to adjudication, and this is usually developed over the years, and usually it reflects the personal history, the values of the individual, and their approach to complicated legal questions. I want to submit that the late's brand was living constitutionalism and judicial activism, because he actively shaped the law and the policy in our land. So we honor him today as we recognize that great legal minds never die. They live on in their writings, and as judges, they live on in their judgments, and therefore they continue to influence future generations. So his influence continues in every constitutional principle we apply, in every case we analyze with the rigor he demanded, and in every moment that we choose principle over pressure. To his beloved family, we extend our deepest condolences, and we pray for God's healing and his comfort. Be assured that his commitment to justice lives on in the lives that he shaped. I take the opportunity to thank the Honorable the Chief Justice for convening this special session, which holds deep significance for all of us. And lastly, Professor Justice George Kanyeihamba, we honor you today with gratitude, with the gratitude of those whose minds and careers you have shaped, and may your contribution to Uganda's legal system be remembered and continue to inspire future generations of judicial officers. May your soul rest in eternal peace for God and my country.
Abantu ab'enjawulo basimye omugenzi Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamba ng'omulamuzi yaliteeyo eryantama naddala bwe kituuka ku ddembe ly'obuntu.
As earlier introduced by the learned Attorney General, appearing before you in my capacity as the Vice President of the Uganda Law Society, holding brief for our President Isaac Chimaze Semakade, My Lords, the Uganda Law Society filed an affidavit in reply to the application, and I do pray that the same be adopted as our official response to the application, and the affidavit in support signed by Her Worship, the Acting Chief Registrar, Lamunu Pamela Ochaya. My Lords, in addition to the welcome submissions of the learned Attorney General, permit me to present this tribute from the Uganda Law Society under the leadership of the Radical Nuba Governing Council in honor of the indomitable spirit of Justice Professor George Wilson Kanyeihamba, a colossus of Uganda's legal, political, and moral landscape, who passed away on the 14th of July 2025. My Lords, Professor Kanyeihamba was more than a judge. He was a consummate politician who stood unyieldingly for justice, constitutionalism, and the rule of law. He was an academic and author who never relented from his calling. Above all, he was exemplary. He was an exemplary citizen, a patriot whose life was spiced with courage, conviction, and unrelenting fight for a better Uganda. He vividly showed us what it means to be pro-citizen. To the bench, to the bar, to the nation, and particularly to those who cherish truth over convenience, let us honor Justice Kanyeihamba by following his example of writing memoirs to immortalize the lessons of our lives for the future generations. My Lords, I would remiss not to emphasize at this occasion that Justice Kanyeihamba was staunchly proud of a radical dimension to his life and career. And my Lord, this can be seen in 6 anecdotes that will suffice. The first one, my Lords, being returning to active legal practice upon retirement. My Lords, when Justice Kanyeihamba retired from the Supreme Court in 2009, at the mandatory age of 70, most expected him to fade into a quiet, sedentary retirement, but that was not Kanyeihamba, my Lords. He returned to active legal practice with a vigor that shamed younger advocates, taking on cases that challenged the status quo. Even in his 80s, he filed a constitutional petition from his wheelchair to oppose an attempt to remove bail provisions, demonstrating that age could not dim his radical fire. As noted elsewhere by the Kampala Lord Mayor and constitutional law giant senior advocate Elias Lukwago, Justice Kanyeihamba remained engaged in legal activism even in his final days, a testament to his refusal to abandon the battlefield of justice. The second one, my Lords, is campaigning aggressively against judicial corruption and incompetence. My Lords, Justice Kanyeihamba was a relentless critic of judicial rot. He publicly condemned the creeping authoritarianism and judicial interference that plagued Uganda's courts, calling out corruption and incompetence with a clarity that puts the powerful at great unease. His writings, including The Blessings and Joy of Being Who You Are, that was in 2012, exposed the internal dynamics of judicial misconduct. He did not just critique, he demanded reform, urging the judiciary to discard colonial tools of suppression and embrace accountability. His voice was a clarion call for a corrupt-free judiciary, a mission that the current Radical Nuba proudly carries forward. My Lord, the third, like Jesus in chapter 11, verse 35, in John chapter 11, verse 35, Justice Kanyeihamba wept. In a poignant display of his passion for justice, Justice Kanyeihamba was moved to tears at the Constitutional Court a decade ago when its administrators refused to register a filing he deemed critical but which they found controversial and offensive. That is why he wept. This was no ordinary petition, my lords. It was a bold challenge to executive overreach, and his emotional response of weeping underscored his deep personal investment in the rule of law. As a jurist who saw the Constitution as a living covenant, his tears were not of weakness, but of frustration at a system that dared to silence truth. This moment that was captured on TV footage remains a powerful symbol of his unyielding commitment. The fourth one, my lords, actively campaigning for a leapfrog rule. My lords, Justice Kanyeihamba was a visionary who saw the inefficiencies in Uganda's judicial system as barriers to justice. He actively campaigned for a leapfrog rule, allowing certain cases of constitutional or public importance to bypass lower courts and proceed directly to the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court. This, my lords, was not just procedural reform. It was a radical push to ensure timely justice for citizens, especially in cases involving human rights and separation of powers. His advocacy for Article 137(5) and similar initiatives rooted in his chairmanship of a legal committee that drafted the 1995 Constitution showed his foresight in making the judiciary more accessible and responsive. Unfortunately, my lords, the whereabouts of a miscellaneous cause that this good judge.
The family of our brother, the late Justice George Kanyeihamba, the distinguished mourners that have turned up this afternoon, good afternoon. I join the many hundreds that have since the passing on of this eminent jurist paid tribute in all media to this distinguished son of Uganda and old boy of Soga College Mwiri. I have been informed by the organizers of this special sitting that it was the late judge's wish that I speak at this function. Who am I to be accorded this responsibility? I do not intend to repeat the many distinctions and achievements that the land judge made in his life. I intend just to discuss a few snippets of our interaction. This will be about George, the person. I first came to know George via his writing. While we were in our second year at Makerere University Law School, his book, Constitutional and Political History of Uganda from 1894 to the present, was published. Obtaining a copy, I realized it had come a year too late, as it was the perfect textbook for our constitutional law paper, which we had done the previous year. Fast forward, I met and came to know George when he joined the Supreme Court of Uganda, and I was a judge at the High Court of Uganda. We became colleagues and friends. In the late 90s, we often had lunch together to discuss many things, mainly about the judiciary and its role in our nation. On one of those occasions, he told me, "Judge, we must get you to the Supreme Court. I told him I'm perfectly happy where I was at the High Court of Uganda at the time. Anyhow, as it turned out, at some point, the Supreme Court needed ad hoc judges to sit with them to enable the work of that court to proceed. I did sit with him on a couple of cases. In one such matter, verbally responding to my partial and lone dissent, he told me, "Your dissent is persuasive, but I have signed onto the majority." Of course, the dissent had not been persuasive enough to win him over. He nevertheless did not wish to discourage a young judge, or rather it was his way of encouraging me on with my approach to constitutional interpretation. George retired from the Supreme Court at the compulsory age for leaving office. He went on to start his own practice of law. Ordinarily, much as this is not a regulated area, a judge returning to practice is frowned upon or barred in some jurisdictions. It can be a minefield, straddling communication between the former judge, now advocate, and his or her former colleagues that remain on the bench. George invited me to attend his last Thanksgiving service at St. Paul's Cathedral, Namirembe. I could not make it. I was to be outside the country at the time. I informed him of my inability to attend. However, a couple of weeks after the event, he called me and thanked me for attending the event. I knew that the mind was playing games with him. That, however, triggered another train of thought and action. He had an action in the Constitutional Court which had been dismissed. I had sat on the same. That judgment was delivered in my absence from the country, but on my written instructions to the registrar prior to my departure. George called me and said that that judgment delivered in my absence must be annulled. I told him I had actually directed it to be delivered, and we could not annul it. He went on to consult a mutual and senior brother in retirement, who assured him that there was nothing remiss. I draw one lesson from it, though. For the last 5 years or so, following the onset of COVID-19, it became the practice of the appellate courts, or at least the Court of Appeal where I sit, for judgments to be delivered by the registrars or deputy registrars or assistant registrars serving in those courts. Though the practice is supported by law and was a response to a health emergency in the world, it was the exception from the normal practice when the judges that rendered a decision delivered it in person in open court. It is time that we returned to what was the ordinary or normal practice of judges delivering their decisions in person. As we pay homage to this sage, let us return to the normal practice in partial honor to him.
Professor Dr. George Wilson Kanyeihamba, omulamuzi eyawummula, yafiira ku ddwaliro e Nakasero Ssabbiiti ewedde era nga waakuziikibwa mu maka ge e Buziga mu ggombolola y'e Makindye mu disitulikiti ya Kampala.